I woke up late for work one day this week and wound up getting to my job about 2 hours later than I was supposed to. On my way in, since it's later than usual, I actually see people up and walking rather than driving to work in their cars. At one point, I spot this gorgeous woman who's getting in her morning jog before she has to go to work. I'm some distance away and she doesn't notice me. She's dressed well, tight-fitting exercise shirt, running shorts, and there I am, looking like a freak show, hunched over my Razor scooter with my backpack. I stop just to watch her for a few minutes. After all, I don't often get to see people on my way to work. I realized that if this were a movie, this would be the moment where the hero reflects upon his life, how he's going to a job that he can't stand, that doesn't pay anything approaching a living wage, has no hope of ever dating a woman like that, and decides to quit his job, go home, and do all those things that he's wanted to do, but has never done for whatever reason. This would be followed by a montage of him actually doing that kind of stuff, making something of himself, and meeting that gal or a gal like her someplace, impressing the hell out of her, and having a relationship with her. Of course, nobody in the movies ever has to worry about how they're going to pay the bills while they're doing the things they've always dreamed of. I don't live in a movie, and I do have to worry about those things, so there's really only one thing I can do at this point.
And in my mother's womb was fashioned to be flesh in the time of 10 months, being compacted in blood of the seed of man.
That's right.
Of the seed of man.
The word seed is sperm, and sperm comes through having sex.
It's shut out of your father's rod,
right.
Put it in layman terms, in his penis.
That's right.
That means a man put his penis in a woman and bust off in it.
Then the angel said to him, "Take out the entrails of this fish, and lay up his heart, and his gall, and his liver for thee. For these are necessary for useful medicines."
The rest of the chapters of the book of Esther,
Go ahead.
which are found neither in the Hebrew nor in the Chaldee.
Greetings, fellow worker slaves, podcasting at 128 kilobits from the Fortress of Squalitude. This is the Atheist in the Trailer Park podcast. I'm your host, Tucker, Professor Fuzznuts, and Buttons are busy wrestling on the couch. Yes, it's a podcast hosted by a guy and his cats. Get over it. This is a Biblical Apocrypha episode where I read a few chapters from the Biblical Apocrypha. I had a guest scheduled for this episode, but they had to cancel at the last minute, so you're stuck with just me again, I'm afraid. I have what should be good news, but really isn't. The good news that isn't is that I got a raise at work. Those of you who were listening back when I started this job will remember that I was told, while my starting rate was lower than what I was making at my previous job, after my 90 days were up, I'd get a raise and be making about what I had been making. You'll also remember that this raise never materialized. The raise I got still has me making over $2 an hour less than what I was making before, but at least it's something. Right? Right? In other work-related bullshit, they threw out the wood I was saving without saying anything to me about it. The only reason that it was still there was that the guy who'd offered to take it home for me couldn't do it on the only day it wasn't raining this past week. Had they given me a few more days, we could have gotten it home. It's not a huge complication as we throw out tons of wood each week, so I should be able to rebuild my pile in a fairly short period of time. If we get the right wood in and they don't stop me from saving it. Just have to see. If I'm not allowed to save any more, that's going to complicate things for me just a tad. I will keep you posted. The only other big piece of news that I have is that I went to what was supposed to be a screening of the documentary about James Baldwin called I Am Not Your Negro last night. I say supposed to be because they had technical difficulties and couldn't show the film. It was held in the Historic Theater not too far from where I live, and I was stunned that they were going to be showing it. You know, I mean, we're not exactly in civilization here, so I can't imagine that the draw was going to be huge. And there was not a large turnout, but it was more than I expected. And it was about a 50-50 mix of white and black, so that's something. I went to support whomever was showing the film, and I wanted to see it because while I'm not terribly familiar with Baldwin's work, I'd heard good things about the film, though some of my white friends have said that it makes them hate white people. While we were waiting for them to figure out that they couldn't show the movie, one of the people involved gave a talk about James Baldwin. She was a white English professor at the local community college. She said that she'd never heard of James Baldwin until fairly recently, and that she became interested in him after the election of Obama. And by that I mean she started poking around in the writings of African Americans after Obama was elected, and that's when she discovered James Baldwin. Now, I'm going to stop here for a moment and say a few things about this. When this professor was introducing herself, she mentioned that she'd gone to the same college I did. I was an English major there, and I hated the English department because the attitude of the professors was that everything we read was some kind of sacred text, which could never be questioned. So our assignments were little more than regurgitating what we'd read for class without putting our own interpretation on the subject matter. You couldn't disagree with the premise of an essay, or you'd face your instructor's wrath. I got dragged before a couple of deans because of an essay I wrote, and it wasn't that I'd said something controversial. No, it was because I didn't simply rewrite the subject of the essay which we'd had to read for the class. I had ripped the subject matter to shreds because I didn't agree with the premise. Oh, and I still have my freshman English textbook. In that, there is an essay by James Baldwin, his Fifth Avenue, Uptown, A Letter from Harlem. I checked it, and we read his essay. I know this because my notes and highlighting are still visible, and in case you're wondering, I like the essay judging by my notes and the parts I highlighted. Okay, back to the professor giving the talk at the theater. She said she was shocked after Obama was elected that Tennessee didn't vote for him. I wanted to shout, how fucking disconnected from society are you that you thought that this state would ever vote for him? Ignoring, for the moment, the issue of race, Tennessee is a strong Republican state, so the odds of it going for a Democratic presidential candidate are pretty slim. Throw in the fact that Obama's black, and the odds of him winning the state, or it even being close, are almost non-existent. Yet there she was saying that she was surprised Tennessee didn't vote for him. I would have liked to have asked any of the African Americans who were there if they were surprised that Tennessee didn't vote for Obama, but we didn't have a Q&A session and I was with some other people, so I didn't get the chance, as once it was announced that they couldn't show the film, we left. I did find out that the film is on Amazon, and since I'm a Prime member, I could watch it for free. I've watched it twice now, and I don't hate white people. Neither did Baldwin, for that matter. There are some appalling scenes in the film which show that in many ways we still haven't made very much progress. Baldwin's comments about race in America seem to be more like a doctor giving a diagnosis than a condemnation of America. To be frank, I found myself identifying with Baldwin as he talked about struggling with poverty and the kind of treatment he was subjected to by whites, and my own experience with people in positions of power who would become enraged when I suggested that we make a minor change in order to make a job easier, turn out a better product, or lower our costs. I'm not going to delve into the details of the film because there's some hot button issues that are too complicated to go into right now. The film isn't an account of his life or his writings. It's instead some of his thoughts on Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, and his commentary on race and American life. Okay, enough of that. Let's get to more of 2nd Baruch, or Barach, or whatever it is. Nevertheless, because you have besought the Most High to reveal to you the interpretation of the vision which you have seen, I have been sent to tell you, and the Mighty One hath assuredly made known to you the methods of the times that have passed, and of those that are destined to pass in his world from the beginning of its creation, even unto its consummation, of those things which are deceit, and of those which are in truth. For as you did see a great cloud which ascended from the sea, and went and covered the earth, this is the duration of the world, which the Mighty One made when he took counsel to make the world. So who did God consult with when he decided he was going to make everything? And it came to pass, drink, when the word had gone forth from his presence, that the duration of the world had come into being in a small degree, and was established according to the multitude of the intelligence of him who sent it. And as you did previously see on the summit of the cloud black waters, which descended previously on the earth, this is the transgression wherewith Adam the first man transgressed. I don't understand. I mean, some of that sounds like it's adhering to the, I don't know what the heresy or it's a New Age philosophy, I know that a lot of people have, that God got bored. So, to entertain himself, as it were, he created the universe and cut off parts of himself and put those into humans. And so everybody is part of God, and then when we die, we all return and get sucked back up into God. Yeah. Okay, whatever. For since when he transgressed, untimely death came into being, grief was named, and anguish was prepared, and pain was created, and trouble consummated, and disease began to be established, and Sheol kept demanding that it should be renewed in blood. And the begetting of children was brought about, and the passion of parents produced, and the greatness of humanity was humiliated, and the goodness languished. Now, there is an interpretation of the story of Genesis that I don't necessarily buy, but it's an interesting theory, and I'll throw it out there, that the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil that Adam and Eve took of in the Bible was actually having sex. Or, as some people have said, it's the moment when humans figured out that sex makes babies. I don't know. But that's a theory. I'm just tossing it out there because it kind of fits. What, therefore, can be blacker or darker than these things? This is the beginning of the black waters which you have seen. And from these black waters again were black derived. And the darkness of darkness was produced, for he became a danger to his own soul, even to the angels. For, moreover, at that time when he was created, they enjoyed liberty. And he became a danger, some of them descended and mingled with the women. And then those who did so were tormented in chains. Okay, so were the angels who came down and boinked the women the ones tormented in chains, or was it the women who decided, I want to get my freak on with an angel who were tormented? I don't know. But the rest of the multitude of the angels, of which there is no number, restrained themselves. Well, if there's no number, then that's zero, right? And those who dwelt on the earth perished together with them through the waters of the deluge. These are the first black waters. And after these waters, you did see bright waters. This is the fount of Abraham. Also his generations and advent of his son, and of his son's son, and of those like him. Because at that time the unwritten law was named amongst them. And the works of the commandments were then fulfilled. and in belief in the coming of judgment was then generated, and hope of the world that was to be renewed was then built up, and the promise of the life that should come hereafter was implanted. These are the bright waters which you have seen. And the black third waters which you have seen, these are the mingling of all sins, which the nations afterwards wrought after the death of those righteous men, and the wickedness of the land of Egypt, wherein they did wickedly in the service wherewith they made their sons to serve. Nevertheless, these also perished at last. And the bright fourth waters which you have seen are the advent of Moses and Aaron and Miriam and Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb and all those like them. For at that time the lamp of the eternal law shone on all those who sat in darkness, which announced to them that believe the promise of their reward, and to them that deny the torment of fire which is reserved for them. But also the heavens at that time were shaken from their place, and those who were under the throne of the Mighty One were perturbed, when he was taking Moses unto himself. For he showed them many... Wow. Yeah, this is just... I'm reading it right. It just doesn't make any fucking sense. For he showed many admonitions together with the principles of the law and the consummation of the times, as also to you, and likewise the pattern of Zion and its measures, in the pattern of which the sanctuary of the present time was to be made. But then also he showed to him the measures of the fire, also the depths of the abyss, and the weight of the winds, and the number of the drops of rain, and the suppression of anger, and the multitude of long suffering, and the truth of judgment, and the root of wisdom, and the riches of understanding, and the fount of knowledge, and the height of the air, and the greatness of paradise, and the consummation of the ages, and the beginning of the day of judgment, and the number of the offerings, and the earths which have not yet come, and the mouth of Gehenna, and the station of vengeance, and the place of faith, and the region of hope, and the likeliness of future torment, and the multitude of innumerable angels, and the flaming hosts, and the splendor of the lightnings, and the voice of the thunders, and the orders of the chiefs of the angels, and the treasuries of light, and the changes of the times, and the investigations of the law. These are the bright fourth waters which you have seen. And the black fifth waters which you have seen reigning are the works of the Amorites wrought, and the spells of their incantations which they wrought, and the wickedness of their mysteries, and the mingling of their pollution. But even Israel was then polluted by sins in the days of the judges, though they saw many signs which were from him who made them. And the bright sixth waters which through did see, this is the time in which David and Solomon were born. And there was at that time the building of Zion, and the dedication of the sanctuary, and the shedding of much blood of the nations that sinned then, and many offerings which were offered then in the dedication of the sanctuary. And peace and tranquility existed at that time. And wisdom was heard in the assembly, and the riches of understanding were magnified in the congregations, and the holy festivals were fulfilled in blessedness and in much joy. And the judgment of the rulers was then seen to be without guile. And the righteousness of the precepts of the Mighty One was accomplished with truth, and the land which was then beloved by the Lord, and because its inhabitants sinned not, it was glorified beyond all lands. And the city Zion ruled then over all lands and regions. Really? Really? I don't think so. These are the bright waters which you have seen. I don't believe anybody ever would have... I just don't get that whole... And Zion ruled over all lands and all regions. I mean, forget the whole fact that they didn't know anything about the Americas, or Antarctica, or Greenland, or most of Europe, or most of Asia, or most of Africa. I can't imagine that they believe that Israel ruled over everything, because that kind of neglects the Romans, the Greeks. You know, are they saying that Israel ruled those lands? I don't think so. Or Babylon? No. And the black seventh waters, which you have seen, this is the perversion brought about by the council of Jeroboam. Who the fuck was Jeroboam? Who took counsel to make 2 calves of gold. So is that's not Aaron. Let's see here. Jeroboam. Wikipedia to the rescue. Jeroboam was the first kingdom. Try that one again. Jeroboam was the first king of the northern kingdom of Israel after the revolt of the 10 northern Israelite tribes against Rehoboam that put an end to the united monarchy. Jeroboam reigned for 22 years. And nobody knows when the fucker lived. And what I mean by nobody knows when he lives is that there's a couple of dates. You know, everybody gives different dates. There's like 2 different names. And I'm not even going to get into all the stuff in the article because it just seems specious to me. In China, there's, you know, the first emperor we are certain who lived was the founder of the Qin dynasty, which is where the name China comes from, and he was really ancient. And yet somehow the Qin stuck to become China. But prior to that, there are other emperors who are, you know, listed in Chinese history, yet everybody knows that those emperors never existed. So I have a feeling Jeroboam could be the same way. Anyways, he took counsel to make 2 calves of gold, and all the iniquities which the kings who were after him, oh my God, iniquitously wrought. That's a fucking mouthful. And the curse of Jezebel and the worship of idols which Israel practiced at that time, and the withholding of rain and the famines which occurred until women eat the fruit of their wombs. Oh yeah, baby. And the time of their captivity which came upon the 9 tribes and a half. How do you have half? I'm not going to ask how you have half a tribe. Because they were in many sins. And Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came and led them away captive. But wasn't he subject to the Zion prior to this? I don't know. But regarding the Gentiles, it were tedious to tell how they always wrought impiety and wickedness, and never wrought righteousness. These are the black 7th waters which you've seen. Oh, God. And the bright 8th waters which you have seen, this is the rectitude and uprightness of Hezekiah, king of Judah, and the grace of God which came upon him. For when Sennacherib, who the fuck is Sennacherib? I don't know. To the Googles. He was king of Assyria from 705 BCE to 681 BCE. He is principally remembered for his military campaigns against Babylon and Judah. He built Nineveh. Was stirred up in order that he might perish, and his wrath troubled him in order that he might thereby perish, for the multitude also of the nations which were with him. Moreover, Hezekiah the king heard those things which the king of Assyria was devising to come and seize and destroy his people, the 2.5 tribes. Again, how do you have half a fucking tribe? Which remained. Nay, more, he wished to overthrow Zion also. Then Hezekiah trusted in his works and had hope in his righteousness, and spoke with the mighty one and said, Behold, for lo, Sennacherib is prepared to destroy us, and he will be boastful and uplifted when he has destroyed Zion. And the mighty one heard him, for Hezekiah was wise, and he had respect unto his prayer because he was righteous. So basically, Hezekiah went to God and said, Hey, dude's going to kill all of us, and he's going to take credit for it and say he's awesome, better than you. You're going to do something about that, ain't you? And thereupon the Mighty One commanded Remiel? I don't know. I don't fucking care. His angel who speaks with you. So I guess this is the guy talking to Baruch. And I went forth and destroyed their multitude, the number of whose chiefs only was 185,000. Yeah, it was only 185,000 people. No biggie. Yeah, I find that one hard to believe. And each one of them had an equal number at his command. Yeah, so I'm just gonna take a quick check here and figure the math on this one. Okay, if I'm reading this right, I may not be. You've got 185,000 warlords who have 185,000 people following them. The math on that, if I'm doing it right, works out to over 3.4 billion people. No! Fuck no! No, there is that. No. That's bullshit. I mean, that's just absurd bullshit. Hang on. I gotta check this. Okay. According to the Googles, the world didn't have a population of 3 billion people until 1959. And this angel is claiming that he wiped out over 3 billion in fucking 600 BC. That's some serious bullshit. Okay, back to the text. And at that time I burned their bodies within, but their raiment and arms I preserved outward. And at that time I burned their bodies within, but their raiment and arms I preserved outwardly, in order that still more wonderful deeds of the Mighty One might appear, and that thereby his name might be spoken of throughout the whole earth. So he turned them into zombies, it sounds like. And Zion was saved and Jerusalem delivered. Israel also was freed from tribulation. And all those who were in the Holy Land rejoiced, and the name of the Mighty One was glorified, so that it was spoken of. These are the bright waters which you have seen. Oh, goody, more black waters. And the black ninth waters which you have seen, this is all the wickedness which was in the days of Manasseh, the son of Hezekiah. For he wrought much impiety, and he slew the righteous, and he wrestled judgment, and he shed the blood of the innocent, and wedded women he violently polluted. Well, that's pretty much par for the course back then, and kind of what God wanted you to do. And he overturned the altars, and destroyed their offerings, and drove forth their priests, lest they should minister in the sanctuary. And he made an image with 5 faces. 4 of them looked to the 4 winds, and the 5th on the summit of the image as an adversary of the zeal of the Mighty One. And then wrath went forth from the presence of the Mighty One, to the intent that Zion should be rooted out, as it also befell in your days, but also against the 2 tribes and a half. Again, I don't get how you have half a tribe. Went forth a decree that they should also be led away captive, as you have now seen. And to such a degree did the impiety of Manasseh increase, that it removed the praise of the Most High from the sanctuary. On this account, Manasseh was at the time named the Impious, and finally his abode was in the fire. For though his prayer was heard with the Most High, finally, when he was cast into the brazen horse, and the brazen horse was melted, it served as a sign unto him for the hour. Wow. Yeah, I guess that would kind of clue you in that God wasn't going to save you if you were thrown into a horse and melted down. For he had not lived perfectly, for he was not worthy, but that but that thenceforward he might know by whom he finally should be tormented. For he who is able to benefit is also able to torment. Yeah, okay. Thus, moreover, did Manesh act impiously and thought that in his time the Mighty One would not inquire into these things. These are the black 9th waters which you have seen. And the bright 10th waters which you have seen, this is the purity of the generations of Josiah, king of Judah, who was the only one at the time who submitted himself to the Mighty One with all his heart and with all his soul. And he cleansed the land from the idols, and hallowed all the vessels which had been polluted, and restored the offerings to the altar, and raised the horn of the holy, and exalted the righteousness, and honored all that were wise in understanding, and brought back the priests to their ministry, and destroyed and removed the magicians and enchanters and necromancers from the land. And not only did he slay the impious that were living, but they also took from the sepulchres the bones of the dead and burned them with fire. And the festivals and the Sabbaths he established in their sanctity, and their polluted ones he burnt in the fire. Oh, that's nice. Hey, you're a leper? Torch him. And the lying prophets which deceived the people, these also he burnt in the fire, and the people who listened to them when they were living, he cast them into the brook Kidron, and heaped stones upon them. Nice. And he was zealous with zeal for the Mighty One with all his soul, and he alone was firm in the law at that time, so that he left none that were uncircumcised or that wrought impiety in all the land all the days of his life. There you go. Imagine that. You're just passing through, and they show up, and they say, "Hey, who are you?" "Well, I'm just Bob. I'm traveling, from here to there." "Well, Bob, we got to see your dick." "Huh?" "Yeah, we got to check your dick out." "What for?" "Well, we got to see if you're circumcised." "Well, I'm not." "Well, we're either going to have to cut the tip of your dick off then or kill you. Which is it?" Man, that's a tough choice. "Therefore, he shall receive an eternal reward, and he shall be glorified with the Mighty One beyond many at a later time. For on his account and on account of those who are like him were the honorable glories of which you were told before, created and prepared. These are the bright waters which you have seen." Oh, for fuck's sake. "And the black 11th waters which you have seen, this is the calamity which is now befalling Zion. Do you think that there is no anguish to the angels in the presence of the Mighty One?" So God's a dick to his own angels. "That Zion was so delivered up, and that, lo, the Gentiles boast in their hearts, and assemble before their idols, and say, She is trodden down who oftentimes trod down, and she has been reduced to servitude who reduced others." Karma, some would say. "Dost you think that in these things the Most High rejoices, or that his name is glorified? But how will it serve towards his righteous judgment? Yet after these things shall the dispersed among the Gentiles be taken hold of by tribulation. And in shame shall they dwell in every place, because so far as Zion is delivered up and Jerusalem laid waste, shall idols prosper in the cities of the Gentiles, and the vapor of the smoke of the incense of the righteousness, and the vapor of the smoke of the incense of the righteousness, which is by the law, is extinguished in Zion. And in the region of Zion, in every place, lo, there is the smoke of impiety. But the king of Babylon will arise, who has now destroyed Zion, and he will boast over the people, and he will speak great things in his heart in the presence of the Most High. But he also shall fall at last. These are the black waters. Good God Almighty, this is terrible. Oh, are we done with that part? Not quite. "And the bright 12th waters which you have seen, this is the word. For after these things time will come when your people shall fall into distress, so that they shall all run the risk of perishing together. Nevertheless, they will be saved, and their enemies will fall in their presence, and they will have in due time much joy. And at that time, after a little interval, Zion will again be rebuilt, and its offerings will again be restored, and the priests will return to their ministry, and also the Gentiles will come to glorify it. Nevertheless, not fully as in the beginning, but it will come to pass, drink, after these things, that there will be the fall of many nations. These are the bright waters which you have seen. For the last waters which you have seen, which were darker than all that were before them, those which were after the 12th number, so that would make them 13th, which were collected together, belong to the whole world. For the Most High made division from the beginning, because he alone knows what will befall. For as to the enormities and the impieties which should be wrought before him, he foresaw 6 kinds of them, and of the good works of the righteous which should be accomplished before him, he foresaw 6 kinds of them, beyond those which he should work at the consummation of the age. On his account there were not black waters with black, nor bright with bright, for it is the consummation. I do not understand any of that. Hear therefore the interpretation of the last black waters which are to come after the black. This is the word. Behold, the days come, and it shall be when the time of the age has ripened, and the harvest of its evil and good seeds has come, that the mighty one will bring upon the earth and its inhabitants and upon its rulers perturbation of spirit and stupor of heart. And they shall hate one another, and provoke one another to fight, and the mean shall rule over the honorable. And those of low degree shall be extolled above the famous, and the many shall be delivered into the hands of the few. And those who were nothing shall rule over the strong, and the poor shall have abundance beyond the rich. And the impious shall exalt themselves above the heroic, and the wise shall be silent, and the foolish shall speak. Neither shall the thought of men be then confirmed, nor the counsel of the mighty, nor shall the hope of those who hoped be confirmed. And when those things which were predicated to have come to pass, then shall confusion fall upon all men, and some of them shall fall in battle, and some of them shall perish in anguish. And some of them shall be destroyed by their own. Good God, man. Then the Most High peoples, whom he has prepared before, and they shall come and make war with the leaders that shall then be left, and it shall come to pass that whoever gets safe out of the war shall die in the earthquake. Thanks, man. Survive that. Why is the ground shaking? And whoever gets safe out of the earthquake shall be burned by the fire, and whoever gets safe out of the fire shall be destroyed by famine. In short, you just can't fucking win, all right? And it shall come to pass, drink, that whoever of the victors and the vanquished gets safe out of and escapes all these things aforesaid will be delivered into the hands of my servant Messiah. For all the earth shall devour its inhabitants. So there's not going to be any left. And the Holy Land shall have mercy on its own, and it shall protect its inhabitants at that time. This is the vision which you have seen, and this is the interpretation. For I have come to tell you these things because your prayer has been heard with the Most High. Jesus fucking Christ, man. I don't know about you, but I need a bit of a breather from that. I mean, you know, this is the kind of nonsense prophecy that James Randi talks about. He says, you know, you'll never go predicting death and destruction because that kind of stuff always happens. And that's the kind of stuff people are always concerned about. You know, nobody wants to hear a prophetic vision where, oh, everything's perfect, it's peaceful, nothing ever goes wrong, blah, blah, blah. No, people want, you know, your enemies will be punished and all this shit. I am reminded of what Isaac Asimov said. He was talking about utopias versus dystopias, and he's pointed out that novels about utopian societies all tended to be rather boring, whereas dystopian societies made the best novels and, you know, sold very well. It's one of those things, conflict is interesting. Cooperation is pretty boring. Okay. Let's get back to this for a second. Here now, also regarding the bright lightning which is to come at the consummation after these black waters. This is the word. After the signs have come, of which you were told before, when the nations become turbulent, and the time of my Messiah is come, he shall both summon all the nations, and some of them he shall spare, but no mention of which ones, and some of them he shall slay, and no mention of which ones. These things, therefore, shall come upon the nations which are to be spared by him. Every nation which knows not Israel, and has not trodden down the seed of Jacob, shall indeed be spared. So if you don't know about Israel, and you haven't killed any Jews, you're golden. And this because some out of every nation shall be subjected to your people, but all those who have ruled over you or have known you shall be given up to the sword. So, if you know about Israel and you ruled over Israel, you're getting killed, which doesn't bode well for the U.S. And it shall come to pass, drink, when he has brought low everything that is in the world, and has sat down in peace for the age on the throne of his kingdom, that joy shall then be revealed, and rest shall appear. And then healing shall descend in dew, and disease shall withdraw, and anxiety and anguish and lamentation pass from amongst men, and gladness proceed through the whole earth. And no one shall again die untimely, nor shall any adversity suddenly befall, and judgments and abusive talk, and contentions, and revenges, and blood, and passions, and envy, and hatred, and whatsoever things are like these shall go into condemnation when they are removed. For it is these very things which have filled this world with evils, and on account of these the life of man has been greatly troubled, and wild beasts shall come from the forest and minister unto men. Great. Bears are going to be preaching at you. Deer are going to be. Have you heard? Deer. Have you heard the word of Bambi? And asps and dragons shall come forth from their holes to submit themselves to a little child. And women shall no longer then have pain when they bear, nor shall they suffer torment when they yield the fruit of the womb. And it shall come to pass, drink, in those days, that the reapers shall not grow weary, nor those that build be toil worn. For the works shall of themselves speedily advance, together with those who do them in much tranquility. For that time is the consummation of that which is corruptible, and the beginning of that which is not corruptible. Therefore, those things which were predicted shall belong to it. Therefore, it is far away from evils, and near to those things which die not. This is the bright lightning which came after the last dark waters. Oh, God. We're getting there, folks. We're getting there. And I answered and said, who can understand, O Lord, your goodness? For it is incomprehensible. Or who can search into your compassions? I'd hardly call killing millions of people, or billions, if you believe this shit, to be compassionate, which are infinite. Or who can comprehend your intelligence? Or who is able to recount the thoughts of your mind? Or who of those who are born can hope to come to those things, unless he is one to whom you are merciful and gracious? Because if assuredly you did not have compassion on man, those who are under your right hand, they could not come to those things. But those who are in the numbers named can be called. But if indeed we who exist know wherefore we have come, and submit ourselves to him who brought us out of Egypt, we shall come again and remember those things which have passed, and shall rejoice regarding that which has been. Yeah, mass murder is a great thing to rejoice over. But if we now But if now we know not wherefore we have come, and recognize not the principate of him who brought us out of Egypt, we shall come again and seek after those things which have been now, and be grieved with pain because of those things which have befallen. Yeah, okay, whatever. And he answered and said unto me, Inasmuch as the revelation of this vision has been interpreted to you as you requested, hear the word of the Most High, that you may know what is to befall you after these things. For you shall surely depart from this earth, nevertheless not unto death, but you shall be preserved unto the consummation of the times. Go up, therefore, to the top of that mountain, and there shall pass before you all the regions of that land, and the figure of the inhabited world, and the tops of the mountains, and the depths of the valleys, and the depths of the seas, and the number of the rivers, that you may see what you are leaving, and whither you are going. Now this shall befall after 40 days. Go now, therefore, during these days, and instruct the people so far as you are able, that they may learn so as not to die at that last time, but may learn in order that they may live at the last times. Jesus fucking Christ. Okay, now, let's recall, prior to this, before he went out and starved himself for a week in the desert, he told everybody, I'm leaving. I gotta go have my visions with God, and I'm not coming back. I'm gonna die in the early morning. Now, he's told, go back to your people. Tell them that you're going to get this information from God and bring it back to them in 40 days or so. And that once they have this information, they don't have to worry about dying in the last days. This would seem to suggest, and maybe I'm crazy here because, obviously none of this shit makes any kind of sense, that the people he was going to be speaking to would be around to witness the end of the world. Now, this book was written, in theory sometime BCE, but I believe in reality it was written sometime in CE. That would mean that everybody who read this would be like, oh, well, this is bullshit because the world hasn't ended and the people who he was going to be telling about are long since dead now. Unless, of course, you've got like all these immortals running around. That's it. Thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of immortal people running around. Yeah, okay. I'm not buying that. And we are getting close to the hour mark. I'm going to cut it off here, folks, because I am tired, and I've got to edit this and get it posted tonight. So, I apologize for being a little shorter episode and that there wasn't a guest, but hopefully I made it as entertaining as it could possibly be. And next week, I don't know, it may be a news episode, maybe the episode I want to do on Charlottesville, it may be another, I may have a guest. Well, we'll just have to see. I'll keep you in suspenders. So, until next time.
That's it for this episode of The Atheist in the Trailer Park Podcast. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, as well as just about anywhere else podcasts can be found. Many of the episodes are also on YouTube. Follow the show on Twitter. @TParkAtheist is the show's Twitter handle. It's on Facebook at facebook.com/trailerparkatheist.com. If you happen to like the podcast, please rate it on iTunes. If you'd like to support the podcast, there's a donate button on the show notes page. You can support it via Patreon at patreon.com/TNTucker. Thanks for listening.
Say goodnight, Fuzz-Nuts.
All I know is this violates every canon of respectable broadcasting.
Damned cat.